And so Nigeria is a Bitcoin hotspot today. Mexico, with its problems with the cartels and all the rest of it, they've just agreed with the World Bank to roll out a new digital ID scheme by late 2026.
We have to talk prophetically, friends. Jesus is coming again. This has been on my list for a minute now, and yeah, it's time to talk about it. Listen, Dr. Conrad Vine just preached a powerful message, okay? The title of this one is Digital Dungeon. This is part 1. There's going to be a link in the description below. We're going to share a thought from that in today's video as we go into this. Now, let me share with you what I have on my list before we get to Dr. Vine's message here. Just a couple months ago, The Economist released this magazine. Okay, every single year, they tend to release a magazine saying a number of things, predictions and stuff like that. And it's good to pay attention to them for a number of reasons. They are forecasting things, not always 100% correct, but there's a lot of truth in that. Now, the fact is coming from The Economist, it deserves some attention. I'm going to explain to you why this is the case. They've made a number of predictions before that has happened.
What is The Economist's World Ahead issue? The Economist isn't just another news magazine. It's been in print since 1843. It's based in London with offices scattered around key financial hubs. But don't be fooled by the bland red title or the polite British tone. This is the publication of record for the world's most powerful class, the bankers, the technocrats, the policymakers who don't answer to voters. It's read in Davos, Switzerland by the global elite, the G20. It's controlled by families like the Agnellis and the Rothschilds. And yes, they're still involved. Evelyn Rothschild chaired the group for nearly 2 decades. The ownership structure today remains unclear, but it's still likely controlled by a handful of legacy interests. This isn't conspiracy, it's public record. Every December, The Economist releases its World Ahead issue, a forecast of what's to come. But over the years, these forecasts have become something else entirely. In 2019, they hinted at global disruption, just months before COVID changed the world. In 2021, the issue spotlighted war, inflation, and social unrest. And weeks later, Russia invaded Ukraine, markets cracked, and protests exploded around the world. And in 2022, they showed Chinese President Xi Jinping on top of the world like a puppet master, signaling a power shift that's now unfolding in real time. Again and again, they don't just describe what might happen, they somehow preview what will happen. And whether that's coincidence or coordination depends on how closely you've been paying attention. This year's 2026 edition, it's not vague, it's not symbolic, it's a straight up forecast for war, collapse, and the elite's managed chaos.
So now, here is the thing. Let me share with you something that's going on here. We are looking at the economy in this video. We are going to see how the system of the beast is being built. We are going to learn the significance of proper interpretation of Bible prophecy. And we are also going to learn that Jesus is coming again. Friends, look at what the Bible says here. For the love of money is the root of all evil. Listen, this is very, very deep. And if you really want to understand which direction the world is going, not only you need your Bible, okay, you need the spirit of prophecy, but you need to follow the money. I'm telling you, behind every war, behind every conflict, and every decisions that are made politically, the direction of the world, certain policies that are written, yes, you need to take a look at the money. And I'm going to explain a little bit more into that. Now, listen, the economists have made some prediction that has gotten attention over the years. Like they talk about pestilence 19. There it is right there. They also predicted this, at least forecasted Russia in the West. And this was due to NATO's expansion to the borders of Russia. I mean, they were predicting, listen, Vladimir Putin is going to react And he did. Okay. Global financial crisis, 2008. They predicted this was going to take place. And guess what? It actually happened. So here are a few more predictions here on my list. We have electronic and political shifts is happening. They are also forecasting these things. Economic showdowns and rebounds and technology adoption, AI, automation, digital currency, climate policy acceleration, military conflicts, and security risk. These are some serious and solemn prediction in the C Capital post made on X. It is stated here 2026 isn't just a year, it's the 0 point of power architecture. As economies collapse, the data, energy, farmer nexus builds the new empire. Chaos isn't a flaw, it's the code. Oh, okay. You will see how this is being explained and at least detailed on just the picture, the cover of this magazine. Look at this picture. I'm going to explain some things here from what I'm seeing thus far. This is a prediction of chaos happening in the culture. Now, look at this. They've also predicted, they are forecasting a number of things as I've done some further research. Artificial intelligence, digital money, we're going to come back to this, surveillance and data power, global governance, climate emergency framing, and social engineering concern. Now, there is a man I've come to appreciate over the years from reading some of his books, okay? This man is Thomas Sowell. I have the book right here. This is one of his books. He has several. Here's why I love this guy. It's not just for political reason. He's an economist, okay? Okay, he's somewhere, that's about close to 90 years old now. I think it's 90 something years old. He's an old man now, but I'll tell you what. This book, somebody recommended this book to me and I was reading that, right? And just on one chapter alone, he's speaking about the real history of slavery. And as I was reading this chapter, something stood out to me. And oftentimes when we hear slavery, we hear social issues, we hear all these different things, we oftentimes think it's just all about the ideology, right? Why is these things coming? Ideology and the evil intent and everything. That might be true. But what Thomas Sowell helps you to understand about world politics, foreign policies, even though he's not coming from a Christian perspective, but he's coming from an economist perspective. And what he helps you to understand is, listen, man, the money is everything. Behind all these decisions, the money. Look at the money, guys. Look at the money. Because the money drives it all. And he shows you that slavery was not about skin color, because it existed in so many different places around the world prior to that. It's always been about the money. You know, it even shows you there were black people who owned slaves during the time. And I'm not denying the evil of slavery, but I'm trying to help you to understand it's not a skin color issue. It's about the money, okay? And the people with the money who are greedy and avarice, the people who love to dominate the world and control everything according to the dollar, those individuals do not care about your skin color. They will do it because money for them is power. Money gives them the leverage to control society. That's what he helps you to understand from the book. Now, let's keep going. Thomas Sowell made this statement now. He says, there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. I mean, this is a bona fide statement. So in every supposed new thing that we are dealing with, keep in mind, the goal is not to solve problems. The goal is either to give you something and take something away from you. Okay, so, and you will see prophetically this is the case. Now, what makes this 2026 very interesting, we are heading toward the 250th anniversary of the United States. Now, for those of you who are students of Bible prophecy, what tends to happen to an empire right around that time? What happens to Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, Rome? What happens during this time? 250 years in Bible prophecy, oftentimes an empire comes to its end. Okay, just look at the history of prophetic interpretation. You will see that every time we are close to this date, that nation is about to fall. Okay, now listen. Here is the thing. We're gonna be looking at this a little bit now. We're gonna take a picture of this, and we're gonna come to Dr. Conrad Vine's sermon. I'm gonna let him do the preaching today, so I'm not gonna be doing the preaching tonight. We have a live stream we are working on right now, so I have a few friends who come in on to talk about this. Now, I'm not sure if you guys heard about what the EU has done. Recently made an announcement that in 2026, a digital ID and personal digital wallet for EU residents, citizens, businesses is gonna be required. Okay, so they're pushing this hard, friends. And by the way, it's coming to America, and I can actually show you a document that was signed couple years ago where the door is already open for this to come to the West. Okay, now let's go quickly to talk about this. Now, when you look at this image here, do you see peace and safety? I see sudden destruction is coming. Now, if you look very carefully, we have the MAGA, we have brain and video games, but don't miss this. We have what? We have the injection coming. More of that. So that means there has to be a virus. This is predicting a lot, right? Whether or not you want to believe some of it, but again, I wouldn't discount everything that's there. Okay, we have some very interesting people here. Okay, we have China, we have Israel. I'm not sure who this guy is. We definitely have Donald Trump here. We have, what do we have here with the money? What do you see is going on with the money here? Look at the graph. The economy is crashing. That's what it's showing. How many years? Celebration of the United States, 250 years. Here is the cake. And guess what's happening? War is coming. This is what they are predicting. We have bloodshed. We have more social unrest. And again, he has a handcuffed, right? So he's attached to the system. So listen, the economists are telling you trouble is coming. You know what's interesting in the midst of all this chaos? We still being entertained. We are being entertained. We are busy with everything else that's happening here. This is very interesting to take a look at these pictures, and they are trying to say something. You know, you don't have to agree with everything that is said here. Read your Bible. You and I, who are students of the word, should already know what's about to take place. But these economists are looking at the condition of the world, and they're saying, hey, watch it. These are some of the things that we see on the forecast, and we just making these predictions. Don't ignore them though. Okay. But what do we do about some of this? Friends, it goes back to what Dr. Vine is going to share with us right now. I'm going to make sure there's a link in the description below for the rest of this. We're going to take about 20 minutes of this, and I want to hear your thoughts, your perspectives in the comment below, and let's have the conversation. Take a listen now.
Because they say this will be a digital dungeon, hence the name for today's talk this morning. And so there's been massive pushback, and the Prime Minister, and being a true democratic individual, has said, we will ignore the voice of the people. We're going to go ahead and do it anyway. So that is what is happening in the UK. So let's take a look at why is this happening in 2025 and 2026? Why didn't it happen in the year 2000? Why didn't it happen in the year 2015? Why are these digital IDs being rolled out, not just in Britain, but in many, many countries around the world? As we speak, digital IDs are being rolled out. So let's take a look first at the UN connection. And if the UN adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in December the 10th, 1948. And the preamble, as you see on the screen there, to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it reads up on the screen, it says, whereas, I know this is very small for you guys, this is just so you know it is there, I'm not making this up, all right? But you can Google Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and this is the first text that you're going to see. The preamble says that whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. And after that mention of inalienable rights, the concept of inalienable rights, that's a hard word to pronounce. inalienable rights, it disappears from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and for the rest of that document, the UN talks about human rights rather than inalienable rights. Now, there's a profound difference between human rights and inalienable rights. Okay? Human rights are not inalienable rights. Inalienable rights do not come from any government, but they come by virtue of creation in the image of God. They are equal for every human. They come by virtue of being created in the image of God in a rational, moral, created order, and as such they are immutable. They cannot be taken away from you. They cannot be changed. Your inalienable rights are your birthright from God. Human rights, though, are granted by governments. And as a general rule throughout history, whenever a nation has a constitution, what you find is whatever rights were being trampled on before the revolution are now enshrined within the constitution of the new nation. So if the previous government, let's say the American Constitution is a great example, the British soldiers were quartered in American homes here in New England, is that right? Yes, and that is why that's in the Bill of Rights, that cannot happen. And so what happens is constitutions are often an affirmation of rights that were trampled on by the prior administration. And if you want to know what the situation was before a constitution was adopted, read the constitution, look at the rights that are explicitly enshrined in it, and that will tell you what the nation was going through before whatever revolution or reformation took place, leading to the new constitution. Here in the United States, we have the Declaration of Independence. And that's what it says there, from July the 4th, 1776. It says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." And I've often wondered, what is the difference between inalienable rights and unalienable rights? I think it is the same thing. I've never found a good explanation for why. Sometimes it's inalienable or unalienable. But anyway, the US Constitution says, among these unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. And I often wonder if we were to apply these principles to our own general conference structure, but we won't go down that path today. So coming back to the UN Declaration of Human Rights, there is really no mention of inalienable rights after the preamble, and we then focus on human rights throughout the documents. And the thing about human rights is they are not immutable. They can be given by governments and they can be taken away by governments. Governments can give rights to its citizens by an act of Congress or an act of Parliament, and the next government can come along and just take away those rights. And so human rights are not absolute rights. They are simply temporary permissions you have from your government to do certain things. And you know, we have various cultural differences around the world, how we interpret these matters. You know, they used to say in the Soviet Union that in Britain, everything is permitted unless it is expressly forbidden. And in Germany, everything is verboten, forbidden, unless it is expressly permitted. And in the Soviet Union, everything is nельзя, which means forbidden. Okay? So we all have different understandings to when we read a document, we come at these documents with very, very different cultural lens on. But Article 6 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says this: everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Now that sounds great, yes? By implication, therefore, the ability to prove your legal identity is a prerequisite for legal existence. No legal identity, no legal existence. You become a non-person. Have you ever got a rental car at an airport at 11 o'clock at night, and there's somebody in the queue next to you, and oh, I forgot my driver's license? They're a non-person. Or you check into a hotel late at night and the person next to you, it was booked on somebody else's credit card, and that card isn't here, and they won't let them use their personal credit card, that person becomes a non-person in that moment. And I see as I travel, people forget key documents and they become non-people vis-a-vis travel, transport, accommodation, car rentals, hotels. This happens. And so the Article 6 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights, even though it sounds very nice, there's an implied downside to this. It is that if you do not have any legal identity, you don't have any legal existence. Now, the Adventist Church celebrates Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which says that everybody has the right to choose their own religion. And they should not be coerced into that. And we say, praise the Lord. That's in fact in one of our official statements. But the problem with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is Article 29.2 and Article 29.3, and you see those on the screen there. And this is why supporting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is profoundly problematic for us as God's remnant people. Because it says there, this is the quote here from the article 29.2 and 29.3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It says, "In the exercise of his rights and freedoms, everyone shall be subject only to such limitations as are determined by law solely for the purpose of securing due recognition and respect for the rights and freedoms of others, and of meeting the just requirements of morality, public order, and the general welfare in a democratic society." What that tells you is that all of the rights listed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in Articles 1 through 28 are not absolute. They're not unalienable. They are subject to whatever is determined by the public authorities to be in the general welfare of society, otherwise known as the common good argument. So you have rights, and you have the right of liberty of conscience in Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but that is subject to the general welfare of a democratic society. If the government determines that the general welfare requires Sunday worship, you have no rights to claim Sabbath worship, for instance. And then the last paragraph there, clause 29.3, these rights and freedoms may in no case be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. So, if the United Nations declares that one of its principles is to preserve our common home, and that requires Sunday lockdowns and Sunday observance, which is being pushed every year at the climate change treaties. This year, right now in Belém, Brazil, it's a massive gathering in northern Brazil of thousands and thousands of activists and governments and NGOs from all around the world, and they're all pushing for coordinated climate change action to save the planet from what they call the climate emergency. And if you look at the language used by ADRA and the language used by the Pope, it is addressed to the Jesuits 10 days ago in the Vatican, it's identical. We're all talking the same language: the need to preserve our common home, the climate emergency, and the common good. And so as the nations and the peoples of the world unite around what they allegedly think is the climate emergency, and there was no global warming this morning in Maine, I can assure you, but as we unite around the alleged climate emergency, we find that Jesuits and ADRA, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, are finding common ground and common language and common objectives to secure our common home. But the point about this final statement here is that you cannot exercise liberty of conscience if it runs contrary to the purposes or principles of the United Nations. If one of the purposes of the United Nations, as they're discussing, is to take climate change action to preserve our common home, and that requires one day a week for us all to rest to preserve the world from the ceaseless cycle of economic consumption, that will be on Sunday, then for your God-given right and responsibility to fear God and give glory to Him and to honor the Sabbath day, that is now done away with. The United Nations is not a democratic organization. In plain English, we are only allowed to exercise our rights subject to the dictates of governments, international governments, or intergovernmental organizations such as the WHO and other UN and globalist stakeholders. Inalienable rights are mentioned in the preamble to the Declaration on Human Rights, but they don't appear thereafter. What the UN calls rights are not rights at all. They're merely temporary permissions that can be revoked at any moment should what you wish to do conflict with what the global governance regime calls, quote, the general welfare of a democratic society, or goes against the UN's own stated purposes and objectives. So in 2013, the UN published a statement about its role as providing a new global governance regime for the entire world. And in 2013, this is what the United Nations stated. It said, partnership can promote a more effective, coherent, representative and accountable global governance regime. A global governance regime under the auspices of the UN will have to ensure that the global commons will be preserved for future generations. The global commons. The UN's purpose is to preserve the global commons, whatever they define that to be. Essentially, national governments are being reduced around the world to translating global governance priorities into national policy. We noticed in Britain before Brexit that it didn't matter who you voted for, you got the same policies at the end of the day. If you voted for Labour or Conservative, which is our version of Republican and Democrat, the faces changed, but the essential policies would not change. Hence, people voted for Brexit. They wanted nothing further to do with what was being dictated from Brussels. And, even then we got politicians who still follow the old policies and the old agenda. So effectively, changing governments in national elections only changes the players, but it doesn't change the core globalist policies. So you have different politicians, the same policies. In America, we call it the uniparty. The uniparty at work. Now, in 2015, the UN adopted Agenda 2030. Have you heard of Agenda 2030? We hear a lot about Project 2025, but perhaps more worrying at a global level is Agenda 2030. So the UN, you used to have what they call the MDGs, or the Millennium Development Goals, and the goal was to eliminate all human poverty by the turn of the millennium, by the year 2000. And actually they made substantive progress towards that. It really wasn't caused by NGOs, non-governmental organizations, wasn't caused by World Vision, Save the Children and ADRA. What lifted more people out of poverty than anything else was good government. Government for the people and economic growth around the world. But because they didn't complete the task, in 2015, the UN voted Agenda 2030, which has 17 what they call Sustainable Development Goals, and all of those goals must be rolled out globally by the governments of the world by the year 2030. Hence the urgency we see right now for digital IDs, because we're running up against that 2030 deadline. The goal of the Agenda 2030 is to eradicate poverty, promote prosperity, and protect the planet by the year 2030. And these Sustainable Development Goals are at the heart of the new globalist regime. And if you look at Sustainable Development Goal number 16, the goal you see on the screen is to promote just, peaceful, and inclusive societies. And you say, well, that doesn't sound bad at all. I mean, this is always couched in nice, positive language. It's like, when my father says, Conrad said, I'd like a conversation with you. That sounds like a nice thing until you realize I'm going to have a learning conversation here, not just a regular conversation here. But when you look at the goals, the specific goals of Sustainable Development Goal 16.9, you see them on the screen there. It's taken from the UN website there. They all look fine until this bottom one here, 16.9, says, by 2030, provide legal identity for all, including birth registration. Now, I used to work in Azerbaijan. I was right on the Iranian border, and high in the mountains there were many communities, and they were absolutely impoverished. And when children were born, the healthcare system was so corrupt that if your child was born, you had to pay a bribe to the registrar to get a birth certificate for your child. And because many families were too poor, they would choose maybe one child to get a birth certificate. And without a birth certificate, you had no legal identity. Without a birth certificate, your child would not be enrolled in one of the schools in the area. Without a birth certificate, you could not go to college. You didn't legally exist. So what you found were children in the mountains growing up who didn't legally exist. They were non-persons who could never access health or education or transport or travel or pension or any kind of social provision within their nation. And so I realized all those years ago that having legal documents, having a legal identity is a huge deal. We take it for granted until you see people living without it. So you see it on the screen now. I've put it a bit more clearly up here. There is the goal of the UN Sustainable Development Goals 16.9 to provide legal identity for all, including birth registration. And then the indicator that goes with it is this. It says the proportion of children under 5 years of age whose births have been registered with the civil authority by age. And the goal is to have 100% of children under the age of 5 registered with a civil authority. Now this sounds benign, but it's not.